Welcome to Best Sega Dreamcast Reviews by Classic Game Room, a collection of some of my favorite Dreamcast reviews from over the years for games like Airforce Delta, Millennium, Soldier Expendable, Sega Marine Fishing, and more. Let's kick this off with the mighty Shenmue. Who needs the U-Arcade when you've got the Intergalactic Space Arcade? Don't have Space Harrier, though. Do have Arkanoid. It's a good game.
Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything.
Buy your presents at Dobuita's Christmas sale.
Welcome to Classic Game Room. I'll just get this review started quickly because it's Shenmue on the Dreamcast. It's about time, right? The guy walks into U-Arcade and says, "Hey, if you don't have Space Harrier, I'm leaving."
One game, 100 yen.
Thankfully they do.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready.
So stick around afterwards and play some Shenmue, which is like a giant expansion pack tacked on to Space Harrier for the Sega Dreamcast. Or is it the other way around?
Man, you're pretty good.
While you're there, you may as well enjoy the jukebox. How about some tunes from Outrun for the Shenmue ass-kicking montage?
You are the champion!
Yes, Shenmue is the champion. This is a very important game, released in 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast by acclaimed game designer Yu Suzuki. Shenmue is like the dawn of the modern era of open-world sandbox action-adventure RPG games. Everything from Grand Theft Auto to Fallout 3 and Watch Dogs and so many other games these days owe a debt of gratitude to Shenmue.
Yeah? Do you want something to drink?
No thanks. I'd better go.
Go out of here and make a right. You'll find Asia Travel Company, but from what I've heard, it's not very good.
Okay.
Be right there.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
What is it?
At the time it was released, this was one of the most expensive, ambitious games in history, so you think they would have ponied up for some better voice actors, but to be honest, the bad acting just puts it over the top for me. I love bad acting.
Good morning, everyone!
It's like a serious, dramatic tale of revenge, but for some reason it's just amplified by the bad acting. I love it. Now, I never played this game when it was new. I remember hearing all about it, but didn't play it until 2014, about a decade and a half after its release.
How about a cola?
Sure.
I think had I played it when it was new, my mind would have exploded. It spans 4 discs, or I guess technically 3 discs on the Sega Dreamcast. And it's not like a modern game where you can just skip to your next event or mission or whatever. In Shenmue, you have to wait until the next day frequently for something to happen.
You do have time to come in, right?
No, I'm in a hurry.
So the game gives you a lot of things to do. You can explore, you can talk to people, or you can play games within the game. Like, hang on, Space Harrier, Excite QTE 2, or Sega Dart 7, just to name a few. Forklift racing, street fighting, motorcycles, Shenmue's got them all.
Excuse me. Hey! Do any sailors ever come in here? Sometimes. But our jackets are too cool for that scum. I want guys like you to wear them.
Sadly, it was a commercial failure. Being a Dreamcast exclusive didn't help since the Dreamcast was a commercial failure. And when reviewing a big game like this, I'm usually cautious not to give away the ending, but don't worry, there really isn't one, because Sega never completed the Shenmue series. Even though the second one was on the Xbox as well as the Dreamcast, it never reached mainstream popularity, and then Grand Theft Auto 3 came out and, well, you know.
Damn it! If only we knew someone who reads Chinese.
As good as Shenmue is, it lacks the immediate guilty pleasures of stealing cars and machine gunning bad guys. After his father is killed under mysterious circumstances at the beginning of the story, Ryu's quest for vengeance is a massive adventure, one that you have to get immersed in to fully appreciate.
Landy-sama, the Phoenix Mirror?
It starts out slowly as Ryu explores his house, then the surrounding streets, and eventually a larger part of the town. With restaurants that you can enter, people you can chat with, and, most importantly,
You need to go home now.
the U-Arcade, my favorite feature in Shenmue. You'll learn to fight and can spend some free time training, which you'll want to do because the later battles in the game can be tough.
That's it. You're mine.
It's like the Sega fanboys' version of Ocarina of Time. If you say anything bad about Shenmue, Sonic the Hedgehog will fall from the sky and personally slap you. It's a lengthy game. If you get stuck, you can rely on the fortune teller, your journal, or an internet walkthrough. Or just play Space Harrier the whole time. That's cool.
I see.
Even though the acting is pretty bad, the expressions on the characters are really good.
If you know what I mean.
One wonders if Sega will ever complete it, and if so, what will it look like? Will it be on the Saturn? I hope so.
Hey, not too bad.
My favorite music has got to be the in-games music, by the way. Excite QTE FTW. But I've got a huge classic game room Shenmue-sized thank you to send to Zach from Starkville, Mississippi. Thank you for sending Space Harrier and the other couple games that came with it, like Hang On and Shenmue. It's quite a game. I called Yu Suzuki late one night after a few drinks. I'm pretty sure it was him I was talking to, and he let me know what the real ending of Shenmue is. In the end, Ryu grows wings, flies into space, and turns into Zaxxon.
Yeah? Do you want something to eat?
No thanks. I'd better go.
Oh, that's a shame.
How'd they forget to put Zaxxon in this? Oh, the arcade's named after him. I get it now.
Game over already?
Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room, where I'm reviewing an excellent game featuring airplanes on the Sega Dreamcast. The only problem with this is that none of them transform into robots with attitude problems. Seriously, what was Konami thinking? All these great airplanes, none of them transform. Released in 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast, if you enjoy arcade-style flight combat games, you're going to love Airforce Delta. The game feels like Konami's answer to Namco's Ace Combat series. They're very similar. And I think Tom Clancy's Hawks took the plot right out of this game, as you're a mercenary group fighting evil mercenaries, flying pretty much every airplane ever made. There's a total of 30 jets to collect in Airforce Delta, a game that's surprisingly good, even better than I expected, on the Sega Dreamcast. To start off, flying smaller jets like the F-5, which many of you may remember as the bad guy planes from the end of Top Gun, which was absurd, of course. This game is pretty silly too when you get down to it, but lots of fun as you complete missions and earn money that you can then spend on new planes, like the F-16, F-22, MiG-29, Su-27, and many, many more. The missions give you some nice variety with a mixture of dogfighting, ground targets, and even some pseudo-end boss battles. There's a couple difficulty settings, and you generally go into combat with a lot of missiles. The guns are pretty much useless, but you'll get used to locking onto targets, blowing them out of the air, or destroying them on the ground while making screaming sounds. It's raining bombs! This game is great, it looks good, it plays well, it's really affordable these days. And I'm surprised it's taken me this long to play it. There's a lot of different environments, about 20 missions, and 30 planes to collect. And if you see it all the way through, you unlock a whole bunch of other stuff. Like one of the jets from G.I. Joe, I think. My only real gripe with the game is that it's a bit awkward with the Dreamcast controller, not the best controller for this kind of game. You can customize your buttons, and once you get into it, it plays really well. I mean, look at the realism. It's like Return of the Jedi, which was fact. The game also gives you some rockin' beats, many of which are a bit cheesy, but not everything can be Iron Eagle. With One Vision, one of the greatest Queen songs ever. That one's for those of you still live in the Cold War, a MiG-25 shooting down SR-71s. And here we have one of my favorite jets, the F-16, laying waste to pretty much everything that you put in front of it. After each mission, you can sit back and watch a replay of the action. What's not to love about this game? In fact, according to eBay, there's even a couple other ones for PlayStation 2 and Xbox. So a big classic game room shout out and thank you once again to my man Frank from San Leandro, California for sending this to the show. It's always a great time to blow things up with airplanes. Especially when it's on the Sega Dreamcast. You'll find loads of missions, lots of great airplanes. Airforce Delta is a game worth owning. Now, if only these F-14s could go back in time like the Final Countdown. You can tell I grew up on these movies. I don't even like flying, but I like blowing things up with airplanes from the comfort of my couch. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Millennium Soldier Expendable on the Sega Dreamcast. The back of the packaging says, "Don't stop running, don't stop shooting, don't start thinking." That's a strategy I can get behind. Millennium Soldier Expendable is a relatively obscure game for the Sega Dreamcast, which has quickly become one of my favorite Dreamcast games. This run-and-gun style shooter from 1999 is insanely fun and filled with explosions and mayhem. That's just my kind of game, and this review has a heavy German influence because Millennium Soldier Expendable, which is just known as Expendable in the US, was sent to the show by my friend Alexander from Duisburg, Germany, and the PAL Dreamcast with which I'm playing it was sent to the show by my friend Anton from Germany, along with that amazing Toro video converting box of magic for the Dreamcast, sending a beautiful SCART signal through the FrameMeister into your brain because this game is worth it. It's really good, and it's so cheap, too. This one plays like it looks on screen. It's like a cross between Ikari Warriors and Shock Troopers. It's not a twin-stick style shooter, though. You fire in the direction that you're running, but you can hold down the right trigger and strafe. And that's what you'll do most of the time, because otherwise it's very difficult to hit enemies that eventually just surround you. This game gets really difficult quickly, and it's a pretty long game, although most of it does look more or less the same. Not the best looking game on the Dreamcast, but it plays really well. And it's tons of fun. There's loads of weapons to pick up. You can also play 2 players simultaneously, which I was doing earlier. There's a plot to the game that I wasn't paying attention to, but basically it appears like you're some kind of a clone sent on a mission to kill everything. So, there you go. Do you need more of a plot than that? You don't. You are expendable, apparently. If you don't complete the mission quickly, you explode and die. So there's that. It's good to know they're looking out for you. If it moves, shoot it. And this 1999 release tries some interesting things with the camera angles and usually fails miserably every time, but they get an A for effort. Sometimes you'll enter the room and the camera perspective will change, and then you'll just end up running out of the room because the direction that you were pushing to enter the room is different than the direction when you're in the room. You'll figure it out eventually. At times, Millennium Soldier Expendable feels a bit half-baked, but the result is worth it. It's filled with explosions. It's like a testosterone-fueled 80s action movie in the late 90s on your Dreamcast in space. This one is a really fun game. There's a lot of levels. You can save your progress as you're playing through it, and that's helpful, otherwise you'll never make it. There's hidden areas and hidden things to collect. You're being scored, and sometimes you save people accidentally, you might blow them up, and occasionally they're aliens in disguise, so watch out for them. So, once again, a huge thanks to my friends Anton and Alexander from Germany for hooking this review up. This game is incredible, and if you like this show at all, trust me, you'll enjoy this. If you have good taste in games like I do. If you like Truxton Beer and Total Recall, not the crappy remake, the original, you'll like this. Could use more explosions, though. Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to the show. It's Classic Game Room. Prepare to enjoy one of the best games on the Sega Dreamcast and score some outrageous points in Giga Wing 2. You're going to want this game momentarily. Should I apologize in advance for spending your money for you? Because your wallet is screwed. This isn't a cheap game, and you're not going to leave this review without wanting it. It's Giga Wing 2, the sequel to Giga Wing 1, which is one of the best games on the Dreamcast, and this one may be even better. As you can see, this is a vertical scrolling arcade-style spaceship shooter released in 2001 from Takumi and Capcom. The objective is to blow up everything in front of you and then collect all of the little metals or whatever those things are that rain upon you while avoiding their laser blasts. You have 5 pilots and airplanes to choose from, each with their own shot pattern. And storyline, this is the Japanese version of Giga Wing 2, and pro tip from Classic Game Room, it's actually cheaper than the Western version. Giga Wing 2 is not a common game, so you are paying for rarity and the fact that it's awesome. As the nice lady says, you have a Reflecto Laser or a Reflecto Force, depending on which one you choose at the beginning of each game, that reflects their shots back at them or shoots them with lasers and makes you momentarily invincible. And that's the key to scoring big points in this game. Destroying things, reflecting shots back into them, and collecting medals and gems. You don't score thousands of points in Giga Wing, you score trillions. The scoring is simply absurd. And the gameplay and music are wonderful. I love the orchestral theme to this game. It's very different than what you'll find in most arcade-style shooters like this. Now, as far as I can tell, if you do a lot of damage reflecting shots or lasers at enemies, you score all of those extra points. Your recharge meter is on the bottom left of this screen. You'll learn to live by that thing, because at some point there's just too many shots on screen to dodge. You're also collecting bombs, but unlike the bombs, your Reflecto Laser is unlimited, it just needs time to recharge. So, knowing what's coming in each level is kind of helpful. And what I'm about to face here is a giant end boss, of course, so let's get ready to throw some shots back in its face. Whoops, I kinda screwed that one up, but that's alright, I'll get it the next time. As you probably noticed, you can play 1 or 2 player with a friend, and there's even a 4-player mode on the Dreamcast. Which I didn't try, but I can only imagine that's chaotic. There's my score, now let's enjoy the plot with Bug Lady here. Ah yes, but I have Pac-Man on my shoulder, and look at me, I used an entire bottle of hair gel. Take that. Five different ships give you a lot of different ways to play the game, and there's some other features as well. Giga Wing 2 is just terrific. If you're into these games, I can't recommend this one highly enough. It has a Japanese and a Western release, and there's even some more Giga Wing games on the PlayStation 2. I'll highlight this as yet another reason that you must have a Sega Dreamcast in your collection, although Giga Wing 2 will cost you more than the actual Dreamcast console. It'll run somewhere between $50 and $70. But honestly, it's worth every penny. Loads of replay value, an excellent game. Giga Wing 1 and Giga Wing 2 are 2 of the best games that you can buy for the Sega Dreamcast. You gotta love it when the game opens like that. Spawn in the Demon's Hand is a 2000 release for your Sega Dreamcast. Don't go looking for this one on PlayStation 2 or Xbox, Dreamcast, and arcade only. I've never seen the arcade game, but I wonder if it had better controls than this. Sadly, this amazing game could have used twin sticks, which the Dreamcast controller does not have. So if you're used to playing first-person or third-person shooters these days, Spawn is a bit confusing because you can't move the camera around you, or even aim for that matter, so you auto-target things and the camera goes where it wants to, which frequently isn't where you want it to go. So often that leads to you standing in corners or staring at a pillar looking the wrong direction. What we've got here is a great arena-style shooter that could have used a better control scheme, but Dreamcast collectors should have this in their collection regardless, because it's a really cool game. For those who don't know, this game is based on Todd McFarlane's popular 1990s comic book, Spawn, which continues to this day. While I never really got into this series, I've always enjoyed Mr. McFarlane's artwork and the art style and design which carries through to this game. It's fast, it's frantic, it's over the top, it's wild, explosive, violent, and I love the music. It fits it all perfectly. The only thing that's not perfect here is the controls and the camera. It's frustrating because you know if this was made today, they'd nail the controls. Moving beyond that, let's talk about what you do here. You choose a character from Spawn, the series, and kill everything that moves. And have a great time doing it. You'll want big speakers, and don't forget to turn up the volume. There's a bunch of different gameplay modes: arena deathmatch, team deathmatch, and boss battle, where you defeat bosses in a certain time, and that's one of the main places where you unlock a lot of the hidden characters, and there's a whole bunch of them. Get a bunch of friends together because Spawn supports 1 to 4 player gameplay on your Dreamcast, and you know what that means. Party game! I absolutely love the guitar-heavy soundtrack in Spawn. You start out with 12 characters, I believe there's 36 total. Many of them will take some time to unlock. Some of them, like Spawn and the guy with the minigun, are better for long-range combat. Others use their fists and swords and are good for the tighter environments. But as you can see from the footage, some of these levels are just downright confusing to play because you really can't see what the hell you're doing. This nice lady with the wings is probably my favorite because swinging a bladed weapon wildly in this game just kinda works. Aside from the obvious control and camera problems, I really can't pick at anything else in Spawn in the Demon's Hand that isn't good. I mean, this is a great example of a comic book-based video game done right. Spawn in the Demon's Hand fits the style of Spawn. The gameplay fits this style, and the music, well, the music is incredible. It would be good in any game. Now, if only I could go back in time and redesign the Dreamcast controller to have dual analog thumbsticks, and then strangle Jar Jar Binks with it. I've got a classic game room shout out and thank you to send to Matthew from Pacific, Missouri. Thank you for sending Spawn to this show. This game is super cool. Spawn. If you think it looks cool, it is. It doesn't cost all that much, and after playing for a while, you will eventually figure out or at least make adjustments to get used to the control scheme and the awkward auto-loading that takes forever. Your characters can also roll out of the way. There's item boxes to keep an eye out for some extra weapons, and depending on who you're playing, they've also got some like alternate modes or superpowers. It's a cool game. Sadly, it could have been better, but Spawn in the Demon's Hand on the Dreamcast is a must-have for your Sega Dreamcast, which you must have a Sega Dreamcast. There's a lot of excellent driving games on the Sega Dreamcast, Ferrari F355 Challenge probably being the best, but I can't think of any more fun than Super Runabout. San Francisco Edition. This game is outrageous, and you're going to want a copy after watching this review. Not too long ago, my friend Ahmed from Springfield Gardens, New York, sent the original Runabout for Sony PlayStation, which was a lot of fun. And no sooner did I review that than he sent this one to the show, which blows that game away. And that was a fun game to begin with. This whole game is like the driving missions in the Grand Theft Auto series before the Grand Theft Auto series became a big thing. Sadly, Super Runabout isn't very long, but it gives you a fairly good-sized environment to drive in, especially for the Dreamcast era. Like the original game, you complete a bunch of missions, and the game keeps track of the time that you complete those missions, as well as the amount of destruction that you rain upon the poor civilians in San Francisco. So it's like you're doing two things at once. The faster cars are obviously faster, but do less damage, whereas the tank does the most damage, but it's really slow and hard to control. Something like this pickup truck here is a good all-around vehicle, but even it can only take so much damage before it stops running, and you lose. If you run out of time, you lose. If you don't complete your objectives, you lose. But the game's really not that hard to get through. It's all about unlocking the secret vehicles, like the BIM here, BIM, which is MIB backwards. Get the joke? Men in Black. The controls are pretty good, way better than I expected. It's a huge advance over the original PlayStation version. Did I mention there's a tank? You need to destroy all of the airplanes on the aircraft carrier to unlock the tank, and there's a bunch of unlockable and hidden stuff like that. How about a street sweeper? Why not? It's not the controls or the fun gameplay that make this good, it's the realism. This probably happens every day in the Navy. Here's a mission where I have to push a bunch of broken down limos onto tow trucks. There's other missions where you build sandwiches and collect ketchup and mustard. Because who doesn't love ketchup and mustard? Who doesn't love slamming a fake Ferrari into a bus? Now, you can't run over people or anything. This isn't GTA. But I think you'll find the driving surprisingly good, especially considering the era that this game came out. It's got an arcade feel, but it's really smooth and the cars actually handle pretty well. It definitely has a bit of a Crazy Taxi vibe to it, and that's not a bad thing. Super Runabout has a great sense of humor. It's cheap as dirt to collect these days for your Dreamcast. Some of the cars are pretty easy to unlock, others will take some serious repeat gameplay. Here's a mission where in order to unlock the secret car, I have to drive through the entire level, destroying nothing, which is of course difficult in a game where I'm supposed to destroy everything. How about a police car? It's all here. In Super Runabout, San Francisco edition for the Dreamcast. Sadly, the music's a bit generic, not nearly as good as the music from the first Runabout that I played. But what are you gonna do? How about running into things with a tank? That's always fun. So I've got a huge classic game room shout out and thank you to send to Ahmed from Springfield Gardens, New York once again, for sending this to the show. It's great. Highly recommended. If you collect for the Dreamcast, you want this. Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the intergalactic space arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything.
If you're like me, then you need to reset the clock on your Dreamcast every time you play it. And what year is it? Nope. Nope, not yet. Keep going. Keep going. I sense the robot invasion right about now. I have gone fishing. It is not that exciting. Sega Marine Fishing.
Select the mode.
Sega Marine Fishing, not to be confused with Sega Bass Fishing, because this game is better.
Welcome to Paradise Ocean. Wasn't that the thing from Dead or Alive Extreme?
Here's what you do in this game. You fish and rock. It's just that simple, and the simplicity makes this the best fishing game ever made.
Fight! Yeah! Oh, be careful!
I don't even know how to go fishing. I mean, I know how to go through the Long John Silver's drive-thru. I'm very good at that. I would like some fish, but make sure to pack in extra hush puppies with that.
The best part about Long John Silver's, or at least the one I used to go to, is that they had A&W root beer on tap. Draft root beer in the Long John Silver's. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah! Woo! No!
Except maybe if Long John Silver's were on the Sega Dreamcast, which it isn't, but Sega Marine Fishing is. One of the best fishing video games ever made means it's still not a good game, but it is kind of ridiculous and fun for a fishing game. It would definitely be enhanced with hush puppies and some draft root beer. But then again, what wouldn't? As you can see, I'm playing this with the Sega Dreamcast fishing controller.
They call me Big Popper. Yeah! Stupid fish! Time to die! Look at the size of this fish!
Like Sega Bass Fishing, this one will play with the standard Dreamcast controller, but why would you? Just get the fishing controller. In fact, this game came with mine. This is like one of those Cabela's hunting games. Instead of the woods being filled with deer and ducks and birds and things to shoot, the oceans are filled with sea creatures waiting to be caught and stomped on.
I'm bonus.
Filet! A fish!
What's the deal?
There's a couple different environments in which to fish, a few different game modes. It's basically an arcade game. You go out and fish, catch as many pounds of fish as you can in each level. When you collect a certain number, you move on to the next level. In fact, I think this was an arcade game. Certainly feels like one. It's kind of fun. For a fishing game, this is how you do it. It doesn't get much better than this, unless you're playing a different game, like Choo Choo Rocket, in which case it's much better than this.
Let's get some fish! It's not the fish I'm after, it's the music. It's great. I love the soundtrack. Yeah!
Unlike Sega Bass Fishing, this one throws any attempt at realism out the window and instead concentrates on the fun of reeling in fish. That's basically all you do. You just reel in the fish and try not to break your line.
We're gonna need a bigger boat! Bigger boat! Bigger boat! Oh! No, don't break the line! Yes! Oh, it's coming out of the water. Eat him! Eat him! Ah. I'm very disappointed. That did not eat the guy.
Oh, it's marble.
With all of these video game soundtrack re-releases, we need this one. Put it on vinyl.
Wow, this is good.
The ocean will have no creatures left by the time I'm done with it. I am going to eat everything in the ocean.
If you're after a fishing game with realism on your Sega Dreamcast, go for Sega Bass Fishing 2. But if you're out to rock and catch everything that moves in as little time as possible, get Sega Marine Fishing.
I'm bonus.
I don't particularly care for fishing games, but if you do, I can't imagine that this one wouldn't be awesome.
Something eat it. Yes, get it. Yeah! What is this thing? That's a very colorful fish. It will go well with some Old Bay seasoning on the grill. It looks very sad coming out of the water. It's all like... Yellowfin tuna. Aren't those a delicacy?
They are when deep fried, smothered with mayonnaise, and covered in cheese. Sega Marine Fishing.
I like this better than Sega Bass Fishing. It's a little bit more extreme. Oh, that skipjack tuna looks very sad. It's like... Get some!
This game claims to have superior fish AI, but does it have Seaman? Is he unlockable? Can you accidentally catch Seaman? Oh no, don't eat me. Oh, you're eating me.
Wow! This is an ugly-ass fish. What is this thing? It looks like a foot with fins. Ah, I don't want to eat that. A dolphin fish. So is that like a half mammal, half fish? What is it? Is that a real thing? Why would you eat a dolphin fish when you could just eat a dolphin? That way you know you're eating something smarter than you.
Game over.
It's time to break out that Sega Dreamcast arcade stick, because today I'm bringing you the review of Zero Gunner 2 for the Sega Dreamcast. The only thing better than a spaceship shooter with spaceships is a spaceship shooter with helicopters. This is Zero Gunner 2 for the Sega Dreamcast from 2001 by the Psychos at Psycho. They did great work, Strikers 1945, Gunbird, and Zero Gunner 1 and 2. The second one being on the mighty Sega Dreamcast, which is a great game system if you like arcade-style shooters, which I do. Giga Wing 1 and 2, Gunbird 2, Border Down, Fast Striker, Mars Matrix, Under Defeat, and this one. Add it to your list. It's not cheap. None of them are, really. Thankfully, when it comes to the Dreamcast, there are, ways around that. This game is great for a lot of reasons. It obviously reminds me of the excellent Under Defeat. Not only are you flying a helicopter, but you can also rotate it around, 360 degrees in fact. Holding down the B button on your Dreamcast controller will sort of lock the rotation point on screen, and it's actually kind of tricky, it's hard to describe, but that allows you to pivot the helicopter around and blow enemies up all over the screen, because they'll be attacking you from every direction. Letting go of the fire button will allow the power-ups and the point cubes, or whatever those are, to float towards your helicopter. Picking those up will score points and also give you a super shot, as indicated by the meter on the top left of the screen. You can play 1 or 2 players on screen at the same time, and there's something like 8 difficulty levels, which is great because you can really tailor the gameplay to your skill. While the levels themselves aren't very long, I love the end bosses, which start out as vehicles and then slowly transform into robots. It's a really cool game, and it takes it easy on you for the first 2 levels. 3 and 4 get a bit challenging, and then by level 5, this game pulls out the stops. There's 7 levels in total. 6 and 7 are just downright insane. Even on easy, it was tough to get through this game. I'm playing on normal right here. You can save your high scores on your Dreamcast VMU card, and I highly recommend playing this one with the Sega Dreamcast arcade stick if possible. Visually, it's a great looking game on the Dreamcast. Nice, bright, colorful levels. It runs smoothly. The music is okay. The reason you want to get this game is the gameplay. It's fun. The controls are great. And the fact that you can spin around and attack your enemies makes it just that much more interesting. I also really like the enemy designs. The backgrounds look super cool. While it may not be as fast-paced and as intense as something like Fast Striker, it's such a fun game that packs unlimited replay value. Each time you play the game, it'll rotate the first 4 levels. Thankfully, you can continue, which helps in practicing levels 5, 6, and 7, because they're way more challenging. Zero Gunner 2 is a very cool game. I love the controls. Why not add this one to your Dreamcast collection? Why not? It's not inexpensive, but if you're into this genre, I feel like you should be used to that by now. The Dreamcast is really cheap and easy to collect for until you get into these. Or until you at least learn that, super special workaround. So, I do have a huge Classic Game Room shout out and thank you to send to my good friend Mike and his son Michael, Sega Genesis fan #1. Thanks for sending Zero Gunner 2 to the show. I'm having fun with this one. Hey, Mike, remember that time we went to Perkins at like 3 in the morning, drunk out of our mind, and they sat us next to the state police? Probably not. Me neither. If you're going to buy a copy of this game on eBay, buy it through the Classic Game Room website. Doesn't cost you anymore, and your shopping experience is enhanced by the power of Lord Carnage. Always a good thing. Thanks for watching the show. See you soon, Mike. And Michael, I hear you're good at Sonic the Hedgehog. Keep it up. Raising kids on Sega Genesis is good parenting. Welcome to Classic Game Room for the review of Virtua Tennis 2 on the Sega Dreamcast. Even more Virtua Tennis, and that's Virtua Fantastic. Virtua Tennis 2 in the Dreamcast. Virtua Tennis 2 featuring Truxton, because I'm predictable. This is the European release. In the United States, this was called Tennis 2K2, and you can find it for a whopping $4 or $5 on eBay. Which is a bargain, because this is a very good game, and I don't even like tennis games all that much. Tennis is nothing more than glorified Pong. In fact, Pong should just sue tennis for stealing its format. Oh look! It's the only 2 tennis players I know. The Williams sisters. I don't know them personally, like we don't hang out and play Pong together, but I'm aware they exist. I had no idea they'd been playing this long.
30-15.
While I know next to nothing about tennis, I've always enjoyed the Virtua Tennis series. They're really fun arcade-style tennis games. And tennis is basically Pong, so what's not to like? It's been a long time since I've played the first Virtua Tennis game on the Dreamcast, but I recall liking it and enjoying the Virtua Tennis games in the arcades back when there were actually arcades. Back when Dave & Buster's had arcade games, instead of all those irritating things that just take your money and spit out tickets. Hooray! I've just spent $50 to buy a 30-cent squeaky toy. That's terrific. Virtua Tennis 2 looks and plays great on the Sega Dreamcast. As you can see, the graphics are quite good, and the gameplay holds up nicely, too. Hooray! Let's knock things off the baggage claim, because why not? You can choose from any number of professional tennis players, but professional tennis players are boring if they're not drunk and getting in trouble. So the more exciting thing to do is create your own tennis players and send them through some kind of a confusing Virtua training program to level up and play in bigger, better matches against other tennis players. I think this would have been pretty neat back in the day. These days, it's kind of a confusing mess. The whole structure of it doesn't really flow well, but if you spend enough time, you'll get the hang of it. The strength of Virtua Tennis is simply its gameplay. It's just really good. Like the first game, it just plays well. It's intuitive. You get out there with your little tennis guy or girl and hit the tennis ball back at the other tennis guy or girl and try to light them on fire. At least that's what I tried to do. Didn't succeed yet, though.
Love.
The Virtua Tennis series continued for many years. It's not a series of games that most people talk about, but if you like tennis or if you like Pong and the Dreamcast, this is cheap enough that you should most definitely check it out. It plays well. You can apply different spin to the balls, and look at all these professional tennis players just waiting to get arrested for something. Or play a game for your enjoyment on the Sega Dreamcast, and I have two people to thank for this. My friend Mark from Bremen, Germany sent the game to the show, and my friend Anton from Germany sent the PAL Dreamcast that is playing the game. There's a whole bunch of tennis courts. I won't lie to you, this would be better if there were giant robots crushing these people, but you can also play a 2-player game against a friend. In fact, you can play a 4-player game, like doubles. In fact, I think it is doubles. I don't know anything about tennis. You could also play Super Breakout on your Atari. Welcome to Classic Game Room. It's always a great day in outer space when there's a new Sega Dreamcast game, and I've got one right here. It's Ghostblade for the Sega Dreamcast. In stereo, it's still thinking. Not only is your Sega Dreamcast still thinking, it's also dreaming of these three fine ladies who pilot spaceships in Ghostblade. Released more than 16 years after the Sega Dreamcast debuted, this is a 2015 vertical scrolling spaceship shooter from the folks at HuCast, the same people who brought us Dux or Dukes, D-U-X. No relation to Frank. That almost puts this game 6 degrees from Van Damme. How about this? It's 6 degrees from Giga Wing, and that's a great thing. But it's not as good as Giga Wing, or Fast Striker, or Mars Matrix. It's good and it's a lot of fun, provided you like spaceship shooters. It's the kind of indie release we've gotten used to seeing on the Dreamcast. This one is definitely better than HuCast's last release, Redux, which was a bit disappointing, although the soundtrack for that game is remarkable, and I like the music in Ghostblade as well. What you do in Ghostblade is simple. You shoot everything in front of you and score big points. You have a standard shot, and that varies depending on which ship you're flying. Holding down the other shot button will focus your fire into a tighter beam that does more damage. It also slows your ship down, but scores more of those technical orbs, the gray ones that float towards your ship after you defeat enemies. And if you collect a whole bunch of those, you earn extra bombs, and they're pretty handy. Especially later in the game when things get tricky. But here's the thing, Ghostblade doesn't do anything better than some other games I've done before, it does it all in a fairly pleasing style on the Sega Dreamcast. This is region free, and I'm playing it with the Sega Dreamcast arcade stick. The controls are excellent. Naturally, using the VMU memory card, the Dreamcast will save your high scores. And I like that it's bright and colorful and fun to look at, but they could have gone one step further. Ghostblade is pretty short, it's only got 5 levels, and level 3 barely counts as a level at all. By the time you get to the last one, you'll be dodging bullet hell madness, so save some bombs. But like I said, there's very little here that jumps out as being better than something else. It's on the Dreamcast, and that's great. I'm not sure what else to say. I like this game. I'm not going to dissuade you from buying it, especially if you're looking for some new Dreamcast games, but I feel like something else could have been put into Ghostblade. Like maybe 2 or 3 more levels. Some different enemies. Maybe they needed somebody like Jean-Claude Van Damme to read the storyline from the instruction manual. 10,000 years ago, there was an artificial intelligence in Mars known as Shira. When it became corrupt, the evil Shira was banned from Mars by the Earth Defense Force! EDF! 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 Here's the rest of the story. You must destroy evil Shira before she steals your copy of Earth Defense Force 2017 and uses it as a drink coaster, thereby scratching it all to hell. If that's not a fight worth fighting for, then I don't know what is. It's got girls in bathing suits flying spaceships, good music, and it's on the Dreamcast. Sure, I could pick at it for not being that original, but really how many of these games are? You should play Ghost Blade because it's fun, it's on the Dreamcast, it has great music, and because it gives you another reason to shout EDF! 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 EDF at the top of your lungs. Anytime, anywhere. Do you like death? Then die! Banished from Earth Classic Game Room broadcasts from the Intergalactic Space Arcade on its never-ending mission to review everything. Welcome to Classic Game Room, where I have an incredible game in my hand for you today. This is Rival Schools 2 on the Sega Dreamcast, one of Capcom's most underrated fighting games. Shouldn't these kids be studying instead of fighting? School in Japan looks fun. Just look at these teenagers enjoying themselves, living active social lives, and kicking the crap out of each other with superpowers. When I was in high school, I just played video games and watched Star Trek. Rival Schools 2 makes it seem a lot cooler than that. This is known as Project Justice, in the US at least, so it does have a Western release that costs a lot of money. I can't comment on the differences between the two because I haven't seen the American one, but while this is a fighting game, here we have a feature which is like Sonic Shuffle or Mario Party. That's pretty much impossible to play if you can't read Japanese. I don't actually know what's going on, I'm just fumbling around with the controller. I'll get to fighting momentarily. Because that's why you want to buy Rival Schools 2. It's a great fighting game. The first one on the PlayStation was really good, and this one is even better. I'm not as familiar with the characters, so I'm going through some training to learn the moves. Because Rival Schools 2 is a challenging Capcom fighting game with a style that separates it from the Street Fighter series, and most of the other Capcom fighters. Instead of giant robots and Ken and Ryu, we have this girl with a tennis racket fighting this lady with purple hair, a face mask, and a chain. So this is what school in Japan is like. Man, I should have transferred. This looks way cooler than just falling asleep in study hall. As you can probably tell, this is the Japanese version of Rival Schools 2. It looks great on the Sega Dreamcast. It's got some interesting musical selections and lots of characters to choose from. I find it to be a very straightforward fighting game that's easy to pick up and play, but really difficult to master. I think this one is actually more approachable than a lot of the other Capcom fighting games. You've got your basic complement of moves and special moves, and then you have a little power gauge down there at the bottom left or bottom right that fills up, and you can unleash some mayhem with the rest of your team that you're fighting with. There's a story mode and a free mode. In the story mode, you play as one of the rival schools and the characters who are in that school, since this is in Japanese, and I didn't go to a Japanese high school, or else my life would have been like this. I can't follow the storyline, but the menus are still pretty easy to navigate. I feel like somebody should make a video game based on my high school experience. Watch Mark draw comics and attempt to buy beer for an exciting night of Herzog's Y on the Sega Genesis. Which is a pretty awesome time, actually. Come to think of it, maybe high school wasn't that bad. It certainly beats getting the crap kicked out of you by some maniac with a sword. I love that each of the characters has what I would consider like some sort of stereotypical high school role, or whatever you would call it. Like the drama nerd, the swimmer douchebag, and the camera dork. I'm not sure who the chick in the lab coat is supposed to be. Maybe the hot TA all the boys have a crush on. In the free mode, you just pick whatever characters you want, team them up together, and then go fight. So there's lots of ways to enjoy the game. The fighting is fun, but I find it amazing how good this game looks. Just imagine if the Dreamcast had the same lifespan as the PlayStation 2, what the late Dreamcast releases would look like. Well, they would look like Stormwind, which looks pretty damn good. I think there's even a feature where you can create your own characters, but I did get stuck in menu navigation for that one. Getting to the fighting is easy though. So I stuck with the characters that they gave me. There's a lot of them, lots of different fighting styles, and tons of fun. And you know, when this game was new, it would have had online capability. That's right, you could have plugged your Dreamcast into the internet and played other human beings, probably with a great deal of lag and jerkiness. The Sega Dreamcast VMU card will save your high scores, and obviously you can invite a friend over and play two-player locally. That's the best way to enjoy these kinds of games anyway. Rival Schools 2 plays nicely with the Sega Dreamcast controller, even though the D-pad is not my favorite for these kinds of games. It still works reasonably well, and you'll use the triggers and button combinations to pull off the special moves. Now's the time to send a classic game room shout out and thank you all the way to John in Bournemouth, Dorset, England, for sending Rival Schools 2 to the show. He apparently bought this in Germany and says it's Erdinger compatible. That's good. You don't want to play a game that's not Erdinger compatible. So thanks again to John. I'm enjoying this Dreamcast release a lot, and according to eBay, there's a bunch of Rival Schools comics and stuff out there too. If you want to learn more about the characters, the game is really fun and worth the above average asking price from what I can tell. So there you go, add another game to your Dreamcast collection. It's Rival Schools 2. Thanks again to John in England. It's not just Pac-Man, ladies and gentlemen. It's Pac-Man on the Sega Dreamcast, which is like Pac-Man Plus, and coincidentally, this game runs at about the speed of Pac-Man Plus. This is an intense version of Pac-Man on the mighty Sega Dreamcast. Looks great, as you can see, and I love the hip-hop Namco remix intro theme that plays during the startup menu. It's great. Of course it's great. It's Pac-Man on the Sega Dreamcast. What's not to love? But it's more than that, because this is the Namco Museum on the Sega Dreamcast, which includes 6 classic Namco games. Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Galaga, Galaxian Pole Position, and Dig Dug. How do you dig Dig Dug the most? You dig Dig Dug the most by digging Dig Dug on the Sega Dreamcast. Like the arcade game, sort of. The controller's not as good as the arcade game joystick, but, you know, what are you gonna do? The Dreamcast isn't perfect, it's beyond perfect. You're just not good enough to understand it. Or its awkward D-pad, but it still gets the job done. I like this Namco Museum release a lot. For starters, it's not that expensive to collect for your Dreamcast, and as you see, it looks really nice. Bright, it's vibrant, it's sharp, and the games play well. They're also super fast. Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man run quickly and put up a good challenge. You can save your high scores. And this is Dreamcast arcade stick compatible, but it's an 8-way arcade stick. And to play Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man properly, you really need a 4-way arcade stick. So I stick with the D-pad, gets the job done, but that's really my only complaint with this version of the game. The Dreamcast controller is rarely the star of the show. Here's a look at Galaga. Of course, Galaga is in this collection, and as you would expect, it plays perfectly well, and it looks good. I'm playing this using the Toro box, outputting RGB via SCART, by the way, so it's extra sharp and colorful. Which is perfect for playing Galaxian, one of my favorites. I grew up playing this game on Atari 2600. I'm a bit out of practice, but now that I have it for Sega Dreamcast, that gives me an excuse to play it some more. The hidden gem in this Namco Museum is Pole Position, though. Not that we haven't all played Pole Position, but when's the last time you've played this version of Pole Position? It's been a while for me. And while it looks spectacular on the Sega Dreamcast, the controls are super touchy, so this one takes some getting used to. Definitely a visual upgrade from the Atari 2600 version. Galaxian looks more or less the same. It was a pretty basic game, but Pole Position shines on the Dreamcast. Now, as we're all waiting for the Sega Dreamcast 2, you can keep your fingers crossed that Namco will release another Namco Museum on the Dreamcast 2, which will be backwards compatible with Dreamcast 1, so just put it out in the Dreamcast. How about some Rolling Thunder, Bosconian? I'm digging Sky Kid on the Switch version. Let's wrap up this review with more Pac-Man. It's Pac-Man month after all. Here on Classic Game Room, celebrating the glory of Pac-Man and my Pac-Man Collector's Guide. A definitive review, beautiful, full-color book, filled with magic and merriment on Amazon. Don't forget to check out Ultramassive Volume 2 as well. And this wonderful collection of Namco games. I love that Galaxian and Pole Position are in here. And of course, you get terrific versions of Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Dig Dug, and Galaga as well. And it's on the Dreamcast, which is thinking about how great Ms. Pac-Man looks in those boots.